Good afternoon. It's April 26, 2017. I'm Sarah Howard, and welcome to the SPIA News Network Special Report.
Today's special report will feature research on women's combat service in the United States military in the post-9/11 period, as well as the ongoing challenges of gender integration within the U.S. Armed Forces. This afternoon we're joined by SNN contributors Clay Gillen and Haley Passmore. Guys, it's great to be with you. Haley, let's start with you. Can you give us a little history on this topic?
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be with you all. So, the most recent development in this area is that the ban on women's combat has been lifted as of today. In 2013, Secretary of Defense Panetta and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, announced they were going to rescind the regulation on women's exclusion from combat. All branches of the military had until January 1st of 2016 to submit a formal request for exemption from this, in which only the Marines did, but they were not granted this request. And so, as of today, women are allowed to participate in all positions within the military, including combat positions.
So what factors led to the lifting of the combat ban?
Well, Stephen, this really began with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, in which the U.S. faced an asymmetrical battlefield. And they saw an increased need for women in combat positions, as well as women in their non-traditional combat roles, such as aviation, transportation, and military police, seeing combat already. So women were seeing combat in these positions, but they weren't being officially recognized for this. And given that, we are seeing a push by the public for women to be allowed in combat roles. In 2011, the Military Leadership Diversity Commission recommended that the combat ban be lifted, and in 2012, the Gender Equality in Combat Act was enacted, and then that led to the catalyst of the lift of the ban in 2016.
To help us understand popular attitudes on the topic of women's combat service, SNN conducted an informal focus group to gauge different perspectives. This is what we heard.
As shown by that clip, I think it's apparent that As shown by that clip, the issue over women serving in combat is far from settled. It seems as though the consensus is that women should be allowed in combat positions, but many people still have their reservations, whether it be about pregnancy or physical strength.
Physical capabilities, sexual assault, just the sheer logistics of integrating women into combat roles. It's all an issue.
Absolutely. As Haley explained, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq allowed women to experience combat, and they've been experiencing combat for the last 16 years. They've gotten into firefights, they've evacuated casualties, they've even served alongside special forces groups in the female engagement teams and in the cultural support teams. Sarah has done some research into this issue. Sarah, what do you have to tell us?
Well, the female engagement teams and the cultural support teams were female teams attached to male direct offensive combat units. Due to cultural norms, male soldiers cannot search or interview female civilians in Iraq or Afghanistan. But because female civilians comprise half the population and were often the center of the home, women often had critical tactical intelligence that was overlooked. Thus, the VETs and the CSTs were created to attach female teams to these male units to search, interact, and interview the females encountered on patrols. These VETs and CSTs were created before the lifting of the ban, and the way they were able to get around the ban is that they would temporarily attach women to these units, whereas the combat ban only prohibited assigning women to these units. One of the main things I wanted to look into was were the VETs actually effective in their task. And evidence shows that the inclusion of women as VETs and CSTs enhance operational effectiveness in three key ways: information gathering, enhanced credibility of U.S. troops, and the perception of protection. A few sources found that the VETs and CSTs were also more well received by their male civilians, in addition to the female civilians that they served, than their male soldier counterparts. As male soldiers were often seen as combatants, regardless of the role they were serving, be it humanitarian or directly offensively combat related, while female soldiers were seen as there to help. Female soldiers were not viewed as combatants due to their perception of being a third gender. They transcended the male combatant female victim binary that we usually see. The VETs and CSTs were allowed access to the female civilians, but were extended the same respect as males in these areas had, which is a unique role the VETs served. The VETs and CSTs used this to their advantage by playing up their femininity when they were on patrols. They would let their ponytail hang out of their helmet, which is a violation of military uniform policy, or removing their helmet entirely, which poses a risk to their security, to show that they were females, to allow the civilians to be more at ease in their presence. By not recognizing the vets and CSUs as a combat role, the veterans' benefits and treatments that they could receive for their injuries were limited as compared to their male counterparts, as Clay will discuss more about now.
Right, so reintegration has always been a major issue for members of the military. The Veterans Affairs actually says that by 2020, women will comprise 12% of the total veteran population. Now, to put that in perspective, a study in 2014 showed that of those accessing VA benefits and health care, only 6.5% were women.
Wow, why is that?
Well, there's multiple barriers, Haley. The biggest one is a lack of quality trained staff. So traditionally, the VA has not had to deal with gender-specific health issues. So in the past, where there's been a need for, say, a gynecologist, they've simply referred women to off-site third parties, such as actual women's health clinics. Now, in the past, where women might not have been a major part of the military, that hasn't been an issue. But with women increasingly making up the veteran population, there has been a greater focus on increasing access to gender-specific health care. There's also the mental health care aspect of it. Women are very much the victims of military sexual trauma, and this leads to higher rates of PTSD seen in female veterans than in their male counterparts. So access to these resources has been a major issue, and the government actually took action. In 2008, the VA began a 5-year women's health care redesign. So there has been some attention to this issue, and we have actually seen a decrease in the disparity of the genders accessing VA benefits.
We've brought together a few different lenses through which to look at this important development in our security policy and in gender relations as a whole.
That just about wraps up our time today. Thanks for joining us on Speed News Network Special Report. And now to Marianne Gallagher at the Daily White House Press Briefing.
Thank you. Cut. All right, so we nailed 7 minutes.
Okay.
That will leave.
Is there any way we can do the first bit again? Because I realized I left some things out. And not that it's critical, but I think it's sort of that. Because
Well,
if you, I don't know.
We do have that nice gap before and after the focus group. So if we want to do the first part again or the second part again, we can. So, yes, we can